Okay, so we have Freedom Trail Realty School Study Guide for Pre-Licensing Course. Got my candle. Good vibes, right? Scent is Evening Fireside Glow. Got my pot of tea. Pot of tea with me. Very peaceful. Cheers to all of you. Lay in bed. Plug those earphones in. Close your eyes. Just listen to this information. Okay. Chapter 1, the basics. There's a lot to know in the big, wide world of real estate. But don't worry. We'll start with some of the basics that will set the stage for the rest of the course material. About this study guide. This study guide covers everything you need to study for the licensing exam, condensed down to around 140 pages. That way, you won't be overwhelmed by a 700-page textbook when it's time to study. It's designed as a companion to our 40-hour course, which will cover the material in greater detail rather than as a standalone text. 3 things to keep in mind when using this study guide. It's dense. Every page covers a lot of information. Please pay careful attention while you're studying. If something is covered in this study guide, you must know it for the exam. No exceptions. While you won't get asked questions about every single thing in here, the license exam is only 120 questions after all. The exam software gives each test taker a slightly different set of questions for their exam. So everything contained in this study guide is fair game and could show up on test day. It might seem like a bit of a pain, but it's a very smart design test and prevents any studying shortcuts. You will see some sections of the highlighted texts in purple. Those sections cover material specific to Massachusetts. Other material is applicable both nationally and in Massachusetts. You may notice footnotes that indicate if something has been removed from the salesperson or broker exam. This study guide is terse by design. Come here, baby. Up, up. Oh, this is my puppy. So cute. So cute. Ah, so cute. So cute. So cute. Step it. Okay, sit with Mama. Mama's gonna read. You can read with me. Okay. Whew. Alright, let's read. This study guide is terse by design since it accompanies the 40-hour course. So if you'd like more detail, Real Estate License Exam for Dummies is an excellent supplementary text, but it's not totally required, and everything you need for passing the licensing exam is covered in this study guide. Please note that this study guide, our course, our website, and all of our other materials and communications are for informational purposes only and are not legal or professional advice. Nothing we provide is legal or professional advice, and if you need legal, or professional advice, you should speak with a licensed attorney or other relevant licensed professional. Massachusetts state mandated pre-class reading for all pre-licensed students. Beginning August 1st, 1994, Massachusetts instituted one-stop licensing. This means that upon successful completion of the licensing exam, the candidate will immediately be licensed to practice real estate. The following examination procedures must be adhered to. You must prepare to pay for the license upon passing the examination. Personal checks will be accepted for the licensing fee. You must have your educational certificate with you. It must be properly completed. And if any part appears to be altered, do not attempt to use it, as you will not be admitted to the examination. At the completion of the pre-license course, all students will be given a candidate handbook. You must read this handbook completely. All of the requirements for the examination are explained in this handbook. Failure to be prepared will result in the forfeiture of the examination fee. If you have questions, you should ask your instructor, the school's authorized agent, or the examination service. Remember, examination fees are not refundable. All candidates must have a Social Security number in order to be examined and licensed. You may not substitute a driver's license number. If you have a criminal or disciplinary history in state, county, or country or jurisdiction, the issuance of your license will be withheld until the board has reviewed your record. The review will be done after you pass the exam. Upon approval of your license, Upon approval, your license will be issued. The record will not be reviewed in advance of the examination. If you have previously held a Massachusetts real estate broker or salesperson license, you must reinstate that license. You may not be issued a new license. Send a written request for reinstatement. Send a written request for reinstatement to the board. Be sure to include your name, address, date of birth, only the last 4 of your Social Security number, and signature. For broker pre-licensed students, when you make your examination reservation, you will be given a professional identification number. This number must be provided to your insurance agent to be used in issuing the requisite bond. You must provide the test center personnel with an original, properly completed, and signed bond prior to being tested. The required bond form is included in the candidate handbook, which will be disseminated upon completion of the pre-license course. If this bond is not properly completed, or you do not have the original, you will not be allowed to test. You must also have your current salesperson's license with you to turn in upon passing the brokerage exam. If you do not have the license, be prepared to sign an attestation concerning the lost license. Licensure and the test. Why do we have licenses? Licenses exist to protect consumers. As a rule, if there's a question on the exam about why the government does something, the answer is to protect the public or for the public good. This is because much of the government's ability to regulate private transactions stems from its police power, the right of the government to enact laws to protect the public. Who needs a license? Most state laws, including Massachusetts law, require that anybody who does any of the following for a fee or with the expectation of receiving a fee, no matter how small the amount, must be licensed as a real estate agent, advertises and or holds himself or herself out as an engaged in the business of selling, renting, leasing, negotiating, exchanging, purchasing, and dealing in real estate or options for real estate. Who governs licensure? The state legislature creates licensing laws, which are permanent unless otherwise stated. A state or local real estate board oversees the laws and enforces them in most states. In Massachusetts, the Board of Registration of Real Estate Brokers and Salespersons issues the licenses and oversees administration and enforcement. The board is a part of the Division of Occupational Licensure. It was established in 1960, and the governor appoints its 5 members. 3 of them are brokers with at least 7 years of experience, and 2 of them don't have licenses at all. Parentheses, they represent the public. One of them is also appointed the chairperson. All members serve 5-year unpaid terms and meet at least 4 times a year. At least 3 members must be present for those meetings, and written meetings records are made available to the public on the Division of Occupational Licensure's website. You can find their offices at 1000 Washington Street in Boston, Mass. In addition to state laws, your real estate activities will also be subject to federal laws. Generally speaking, the state laws build on federal law and is more specific than federal law. In a conflict between the two, federal law usually wins. I know, federal law usually wins. Such a good baby, you're so good. Okay. Let's see. We need to know the difference between these types of laws for the 2 sections of the licensure test. The Massachusetts licensing test. After you finish the 40-hour pre-licensing class, you will need to pass the real estate licensing test, either salesperson or broker. The test is administered by an outside agency, PSI exams, so you won't take it in class. It is offered several times a week in Boston, as well as in Auburn, Worcester, Springfield, and other locations throughout the state. To take the test, take the test, you will send your course completion certificate along with some test application paperwork to PSI exams for approval. This lets PSI double check that you have properly completed your course requirements and run a background check before you get your license. After reviewing your paperwork and running a background check, PSI will approve your application and let you choose a test date. You will receive all of the paperwork for the test application after you complete your course. You can't apply for the exam until you have fully completed your course requirements. If you're wondering what PSI is looking for during the background check, you can check out the Massachusetts Real Estate Board's Good Moral Character Requirements here at mass.gov/service details/statutes and regulations for real estate brokers and licensed salespersons. Note that a real estate candidate with a criminal conviction must pass the exam and request permission from the board for licensing. The board will make a judgment on whether or not the candidate should be licensed. See above link. You should also be aware that the pursuant MGL 62C licensure candidates must pay all the state taxes owed and file all state returns as required by the law before they may be licensed. The cost of the licensing exam varies depending on if you are taking a salesperson or broker exam. The salesperson license is $85 for your first try, a $54 test fee, and a $31 processing fee, and $54 for any retakes. The broker license is $106 for your first try, $54 test fee, and a $52 processing fee, and $54 for any retakes. The salesperson and broker license tests are entirely multiple choice and have two sections. One, general or national real estate knowledge, and two, Massachusetts law. For salespersons, the general section is 80 questions, and the Massachusetts law is 40 questions. For brokers, the general section is 75 questions, with 5 of them as 2-point scenario-based questions, and Massachusetts law is 40 questions. You might also receive some extra experimental questions when you take the exam, which is the testing company trying to use out new question formats. If you do see an experimental question, you will most likely receive an extra 10 questions on the general and an extra 5 questions on the Massachusetts law section. You may or may not know which questions are experimental, depending on the version of the test you receive, but any extra experimental questions will not count for your score, and your score will only be calculated based on the 120 points of the 80 questions for salespersons and 75 for the brokers on the general section, and 40 questions for both the salesperson and the brokers on the Massachusetts law section. For both the salesperson and the broker licensing tests, you have 4 hours to complete the test, and you must score at least 70% on each section in order to pass. If you fail one section, you will only need to retake the section that you failed. You won't have to retake the whole test. You'll have to wait at least 24 hours in between retakes, though we'd recommend studying a bit more than that! Word of warning, the test can be tricky. It doesn't always ask questions directly, and instead expects you to recognize and apply the principles and rules you learned in the course. You need to fully understand, not just memorize, all of the concepts and terminologies that we go over in class. make sure to study for the test. You know this study guide? You should know this study guide by heart. We recommend a minimum of 20 hours of study after you complete your 40 classroom hours, which usually takes at least 2 to 3 weeks, assuming you're studying part-time. Once you pass the test, you'll receive your license on the spot. Congratulations, you're now ready for your next step in real estate. Time to go make money, says Massachusetts law. Okay? Key terms: salespersons, brokers, and realtors. It's important that we differentiate among a few key terms: salesperson, broker, and realtor. In most states, there are 2 types of real estate licenses: broker's license and salesperson's license. The main differences are outlined below. And by below, they mean next page. Right. Okay. Salesperson's license must affiliate with a broker's to practice. Let's try that again. Salesperson's license must affiliate with a broker to practice real estate. May not accept direct client payments. Must be 18 years old and take the 40-hour class, pass the state exam, and pay the fee. Broker's license can do all that a real estate salesperson can do, plus they may operate independently, accept direct client payments, and handle escrow funds, parentheses, client deposits. Employing brokers or brokers of record typically have this authority. Associate brokers or broker associates are those with broker's licenses who choose to work under another broker. They are not permitted to handle escrow accounts. Must have 3 years of experience as a salesperson and take an additional 40-hour class, pass an additional state exam, and be bonded for $5,000 and pay the fee. All right, little one, you're going on the ground. Realtors and the NAR. Realtor licenses aren't listed above because being a realtor isn't a matter of state licensing. It's a membership in a trade association. Established in 1908, the National Association of Realtors, NAR, whose members are known as realtors, is the largest trade association and one of the most powerful lobbying groups in the United States. In Massachusetts, you become a realtor by joining a local chapter of the Massachusetts Association of Realtors after you're licensed as a Massachusetts real estate person or broker. It is optional, and you can sell real estate whether or not you choose to become a realtor, though membership does provide many benefits and is often worthwhile. The NAR membership includes people involved in many different aspects of real estate: residential and commercial brokers, salespersons, property managers, appraisers, and more. These members belong to one or multiple local realtor associations. Realtors must follow a special code of ethics and standards of practice that were adopted in 1913, which go beyond state licensures, laws, and regulations. When opening an office, be aware that all agents associated with that office typically ought to become realtors if the office is associated with a local realtor association. Failure by an agent in a realtor office to become a realtor may result in assessment of the office's designated realtor, usually the owner of the brokerage. other key concepts to know. The basics of a real estate transaction. Whether you've bought or sold a house for yourself or have been involved in the real estate industry already, you might be familiar with the process and timeline of a real estate transaction. Let's briefly take a look at typical transactions from the listing agent's perspective. Note that the usual process for a real estate sales transaction takes anywhere from 1 to 12 plus months, and about 2 to 4 months on average. When you are hired as a listing agent by a seller to sell their property. Let's bring that baby up. Let's restart that paragraph. When you are hired as a listing agent by a seller or to the seller's property, you are working in their best interest to get the property sold for the most money in the shortest time frame, if that is their desire. The first step is preparing the property for sale. This might include hiring a photographer or stager to best showcase the property. Advertising the property is one of the most important aspects of a listing agent's job. This is how you find a buyer. Typically, the property will be advertised for sale on the multiple listing services, MLS, accessed via your brokerage, online on Zillow, Realtor.com, etc., and in newspapers or specialty publications. Buyers will contact either the listing agent directly or the buyer's agent, who will contact the listing agent to see the property and will be setting up a showing. Qualifying buyers through a standard series of questions, such as their moving time frame, if they have a pre-approval, and what they are looking for in their next home, can ensure that the property is a good match for their needs, so no time is wasted showing on either side. After the buyer has viewed the property, either at an open house or private showing, they may submit an offer, and if the seller accepts it, a purchase and sales contract, P&S, will be drafted and signed typically within 7 to 14 days. Once the offer is accepted, then the buyer has a period of time, depending on what was negotiated, anywhere between a few days and 2 weeks, to do their due diligence in examining the property with professionals. Depending on what contingencies were included in their offer, a buyer might gather more information of specific zoning restrictions for the property, investigate easements, flood insurance costs, have a home inspection, get the property tested for radon gas or other hazardous materials, etc. During the due diligence period, an agent's job is to help their buyers by gathering any necessary information, refer them to appropriate professionals, and keep the buyer on track to complete the due diligence in the required time frame stated in the contract. As the listing agent, it's important to communicate clearly with the buyer side, answer questions, and disclose any information regarding material deficits or defects that may reveal later in the transaction. Once the due diligence is complete, the attorneys will draft the purchase and sales contract, typically about 7 to 14 days after the offer is accepted, but this can vary. Once the terms and conditions of the P&S are met, parentheses, securing financing, clearing any title issues, if there were any lingering repair items, etc. Then the final sale can take place once the terms and conditions of the P&S are met, securing and financing, completing inspections, etc. The final sale will take place, the settlement or closing. The parties at the closing table typically include the seller, buyer, their attorney, the closing attorney, and or the title company representative, and possibly the lender. After closing, the transfer of ownership is recorded, and the brokerages and their agents are paid. The principal, special agent, and sub-agent. Your client, often referred to as your principal, is the person who hires an agent in a real estate transaction. Legally, only the broker, the special agent in the transaction, can be hired and paid directly by the principal. The broker will pay their agents as a sub-agent, meaning an agent who's working for an agent. This means the salesperson will be the client's sub-agent and the broker's agent. Note that an agent with a broker's license who chooses to work under another broker is considered a broker associate or associate broker. Associate brokers are generally considered sub-agents. Vicarious liability is the idea that the principal is liable for the actions of their agents. This is particularly important for brokers to be aware of. Brokers are responsible for the actions of all of their agents, as if the broker themselves had taken them. This means that if you're a broker and one of your agents violates the law, you're in trouble too, as if you had violated the law yourself. Because of this, it is important and required that brokers supervise their agents and establish office policies and procedures that their agents are required to follow. Brokers are responsible for knowing the laws and regulations governing real estate transactions and are responsible for making sure that their agent always follows the rules. Note that this also includes real estate teams that work for the broker, as well as any personal assistants or other employees that the agents hire. If an agent does something, whether they're a part of a team, using an assistant, or working by themselves, the broker is responsible. Therefore, brokers must supervise any teams that work for them and monitor and supervise their agents' use of assistants or other employees. Speaking of teams, watch out for potential employment and advertising issues with real estate teams. A team is really just a group of agents that all work for the same broker and decide to work together. A team is not a brokerage or a separate entity. The agents on the team all work for the same broker, and the team cannot advertise independently of the broker or hire agents itself. If the broker hires agents as independent contractors, then all the agents on the team are also independent contractors of the broker. Therefore, if a group of agents form a team in an office, the broker of record for that office should ensure members of the team are always treated as independent contractors of the broker and not as agents of the team or as W-2 employees. Finally, watch out for issues related to payment of unlicensed assistants, whether on team or otherwise. Unlicensed assistants are very limited in what they can legally do in a real estate transaction. Both brokers and agents are never allowed to pay or split commissions with their unlicensed assistants. Brokers should always be aware when a license is required in a real estate transaction and establish policies for their agents about the use of unlicensed assistants. But because brokers are responsible for the actions of their agents, some brokers will require their agents' assistants to be licensed to avoid any potential issues with unlicensed assistants entirely. 1099 versus W-2. Hiring at a brokerage generally takes two forms: 1099 independent contractor or as a W-2 employee. If someone is paid by a job or on commission, sets their own schedule, can turn down work, use their own methods, etc., then they are likely a 1099 independent contractor. Most residential real estates are 1099 contractors. On the other hand, if someone is salaried or paid hourly and the employer controls what or how the work is done, then they are likely a W-2 employee. This is sometimes the case in commercial real estate or when real estate brokers hire administrators or assistants. For the agent, tax implications of being a 1099 contractor versus a W-2 employee are critical to understand. Most notably, unlike a W-2 employee, 1099 independent contractors do not have taxes withheld from their pay. They are treated as self-employed and are solely responsible for their own tax withholding. Those who are 1099 shouldn't spend their full commission checks because taxes will be owed at the end of the year or quarterly. However, 1099 independent contractors may also take advantage of many tax write-offs, also known as tax deductions, that W-2 employees may not. It is therefore wise to seek the assistance when preparing taxes as a 1099 independent contractor and to keep careful track of all business expenses. While we're on the topic of tax deductions, it's important to note that not everything is tax deductible. Only certain money that is spent on the business can be deducted, and there must be receipts or records. Furthermore, deductible does not mean free. Unlike tax credits, which are subtracted directly from your tax bill, tax deductions do not directly reduce your tax bill and instead reduce your taxable income. So, for example, if you earned $100,000 for the year and your effective tax rate was 30%, you would owe $30,000 in taxes. A $5,000 tax deduction A $5,000 tax deduction would reduce your tax bill to $28,500, which is $10,000 income subtracted by $5,000 of a deduction equals $95,000 multiplied by 0.3 tax rate, equaling $28,500 tax bill. The $5,000 deduction would therefore be worth only $1,500 off your taxes, not the full $5,000. If this all seems complicated, it's because it kind of can be. This is why CPAs exist. If an agent is hired as a 1099 independent contractor, a written independent contractor agreement will govern how much commission payments will be when an agent is entitled to pay, how pay works, who owns the agent's listings, how the relationship can be terminated, and so forth. It is important that the salespersons and the brokers have written agreement outlining their relationship and converting. I'll try that sentence again. It is important that salespersons and brokers have written agreement outlining their relationship and covering all of these topics to avoid misunderstandings and conflicts. State realtor associations often have a template independent contract agreement available for their members, but the terms of the agreement are fundamentally negotiable, and you do not have to use a template agreement. So, for future salespersons, be sure to read your independent contractor agreement and understand it before you begin working. And for future brokers, be sure that you have written an agreement with every agent and get your agreements reviewed by an attorney before using them. On the other hand, W-2 employee relationships are often governed by an employee handbook or similar document. While the employment itself is at will, meaning the party may terminate at any time. Most states have strict rules about W-2 employment. If you eventually become a broker and want to hire agents as W-2 employees, talk to an employment attorney about the rules in your state before beginning to hire agents. Insurance. There are two types of insurance that brokerages and their agents often carry. Professional liability insurance, aka errors and omissions insurance, and general liability insurance. Professional liability insurance provides protection against the inevitable human mistakes brokers and salespersons make while providing real estate services to their clients. General liability insurance, on the other hand, provides coverage for personal or property damage that might occur either at the brokerage or during showings. For example, a client slipped and fell on the office stoop. Agents usually do not need to worry about general liability insurance, as it is generally covered by the brokerage, but should strongly consider purchasing their own professional liability insurance, and broker owners should generally have liability insurance for their brokerage. That's all for the basic foundational terms and concepts. Let's dig into section 1. Okay, I'm going to stop there. The next section is property rights. Thank you for listening. I'm going to listen to this information and reread it. I hope this was helpful. That is the first section of the real estate study guide.